Welcome back, Stassa 23 here, back again with some knife therapy. Today I have a fun video and possibly an open tag. If anybody else would like to try this out, I would love to see some people do it as well. So I'll put it as an open tag video, and basically it is the Stassa 23 knife journey, the journey I took from when I got into knives and how the different phases went in my life with knives. So you can kind of see the progression that I took. So we're going to start off all the way back in the beginning. One of the first knives that I received technically would have been one like this. Some of these are substitutes because I don't really have all the ones I used to have back in the day. But my dad gave me a Swiss Army knife, one with the blunted tip on it. So I didn't stab myself. But this one I carried and used for a while. And then when I started hunting with my older brothers, and I remember I thought this was the coolest knife ever. He bought me this buck, I think it's a 55. And my oldest brother had the 110 Hunter, and my middle brother, of course, had to have the Ranger. So it went in size. And I love this knife. I used it, abused it, threw it at stuff, did stuff that you're not supposed to do with a knife at that time. I think I was like 7 years old, something like that. And it definitely got my fascination with knives started. The buck knife, my brother always, when we went hunt, he always had a buck fixed blade on his side, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And of course, I want to be just like my older brothers. So I started fixating on one of those, and begging my dad, please give me a knife, please give me a knife. So like I said, he started me out with this little guy just to show that I was mature enough to handle a knife properly. I remember he used to open it for me at first, and then my mom said she didn't like the fact that it did not have a lock on it. So that's what ultimately got him to get me the buck 55. Which became, the true start of my passion for knives. So that was how it first started. Now we'll go on to the next. So after that, the excitement began, and I just wanted to get any kind of knife I could find. So the next ones I ended up starting to pick up were the flea market specials. Like your Z Hunter, not actually Z Hunter, and or just cheap knives in general. Like I got this one from, I think, Academy or something back in the day. Some store like that, a sports store. I don't even think Academy was around back then when I got it. But this was actually one from back in the day, I'm pretty sure, because I have a box of old stuff. But I got tons of these kind of knives, just like so many others. I couldn't afford to get anything nice. And I didn't really know that there was anything nicer than this. I just thought, those are knives. They're made to cut. And of course, they look so cool. This one has a spinner thing on it. And of course, I was super young, didn't know any better. And I continued doing that, any kind of knife I could find. Friends give me stuff. I had a nice little collection of junkers and some fixed blades. By the time I think I was 11, I had a nice little collection, about 20 or 30 knives. And I knew the progression was not going to stop from there. So from there we went to, thanks to the Boy Scout magazine, from those gas station knives and cheap beaters, still kind of in that realm, but I got fixated on the Italian stiletto blade. And you could tell, look at that. It was victim to sharpening at, I think, 14, trying to figure it out. But my brother used to get the Boy Scout magazine, and I think I was in like 6th grade, maybe 5th grade, I don't know. And I saw they had this stiletto style knife in the Boy Scout magazine that you could order. And I thought it was a switchblade because I didn't know you could, I didn't know there was lockbacks and stuff like that. I thought every one of them that had this shape was an actual automatic knife, something at that time we couldn't even own in Louisiana, but I didn't know any of that stuff. So this was the first one I got, and then I remember I was so bummed out to know that it didn't come out by itself. So I searched and searched, and of course, found this one at a flea market. We had my first push button automatic side open stiletto. Amazed, and literally it took me forever to figure out how to close this thing once I opened it. I was pushing on everything, and then one day I accidentally pushed this over like that, and I didn't know that that's how it closed. And of course, after that, I was on the hunt again. You know, I thought this one was so cool, cheap. Then I wanted to get something that looked a little different than these two, because these two had that same kind of style bolster. So I picked up this one. I think this is called the cheetah pattern one. I got this one from a what do you call it? Antique shop or whatever. They had this one. I thought this one was the coolest thing ever. And it looked a little bit different from the rest. And I also got this one from the antique shop. So this one was a junker, but I just thought it was cool. So that was my next phase, the stiletto knife. I definitely had more than this at one point. A lot of my older knives got stolen out of my house, so I don't have the ones to show you, which I still have some good stand-ins. So that was my next phase, the stiletto. So as I started using those other cheaper knives, I noticed that they just didn't hold a good edge. So I started talking to, you know, my brothers and stuff like that, and they told me, if you want a good knife, you got to get a Buck. And at that time, Buck was, you know, it was the name at the time back in the early 90s. So I decided to go upgrade from the 55 and get myself a Buck Ranger, since I was older now and I was about the same age as my middle brother that had the Buck Ranger. So loved it. Carried this isn't the exact one. I bought another one, but I thought the fascination of that clip point was now a thing. You know, it started with the 55, but this one, I actually, you know, got to use it for some real task, you know, but others mainly chopping up sticks. Let's just be honest. I mean, I was young. I was in school, and I carried this one around for a good while. But I remember thinking to myself, you know, this one's kind of heavy. I had to have a sheath with it, so I could only carry it certain places. And I wanted something that I could clip to my pocket. So the hunt was on from here. So I retired this one, and I started hunting for something that I could clip to my pocket. That was the next cool thing. So I was on the hunt. I went to my local mall at the time, and it didn't last but a month or so, but they opened up a cutlery shop in there with folding knives, kitchen knives, stuff like that. And I remember how excited I was because I found this, not this size. I had bought a medium size cold steel Voyager. It was the old school kind. I think it was just a regular back lock. I think it didn't have the triad lock at that time, but it had a pocket clip. It was a hard pocket clip to use because of the texture, but oh man. And of course I had to watch the videos of Lynn Thompson, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is the end all be all. I carried my medium Voyager. I think I probably carried it for like 3 years straight. I think I carried it everywhere I went. And I carried it, but then the new cool thing was, and I started, this is probably 7 or 8 years ago, I started watching YouTube videos. Whenever YouTube began, I started watching YouTube videos on knives, and I saw that there was way more knives than I even knew about. And I forgot whose channel I was watching at the time. It's probably like a Nut and Fancy or something like that, because that's who, you know, were the channels when I first started looking at them. And, you know, he talked about the Voyager, so I was like, oh yeah, I made an awesome purchase on the Voyager. And Voyager is an excellent knife. I definitely made some bad purchases in between. And the next phase I went through, well, y'all just got to wait and see. Let's find out. All right, that next phase was the assisted open knife. Boy, I thought it was so cool because I had found out that automatics were illegal in my area, but assisted openings weren't. And I could carry this around. This is one from back in the day too. I could carry this around. Such a cool knife. I think it was the first one I got. I think it was a Kershaw Blur. It was either Blur or Leak. So I bought so many Kershaw assisted openings and some, knockoff assist type knives that just were kind of junk. But mainly I was fascinated with the Kershaws because theirs came out so fast compared to some of the rest. And I did that for a while. And then at this time I'm working, working in the construction field and stuff like that with these knives, doing some plant work here and there. And a lot of those old time guys had different knives on them, and I watched that, and you don't ever know what stuff will influence you. So I went to a different little area after this one in that industry, and let's see what that was. Like I said, it was a bunch of like old timers and stuff like that, tradesmen. So I got fascinated with, the trades knives, like this Klein tool, because I did some electrical work. So I had to have me an electrical knife, of course. And a lot of the welders and stuff like that, the old welders had these slip joints on them, case slip joints. So I went through a case slip joint phase as well. And I had several different, of course, razor knives, like try to get the coolest and sharpest knife, because that's all they would all talk about. My knife's this sharp. So, using those carbide pull-through systems, tearing our knives up. But I used this one for a while. Nice little patina on there. And loved it. I ended up getting several of these case side busters. I thought this was such a beautiful knife. Still is a beautiful knife. And I have several of these as well. These were the electrician or whatever, that type of stuff. Lineman type knives. I thought those were so cool. And that carried on until I wanted something a little bit more accessible to me while these were in the pocket, because I was carrying stuff around a lot. So I ended up buying a whole bunch of these neck knives. This is just some of them. I remember I picked up one of these CRKT Minimalist, and wow, I thought, it was so easy. I could use one hand, grab it, cut something. I didn't have to open it up, and then I could put it back in the sheath. Super easy, and I still carry neck knives, depending on what I'm doing here and there. But they were super useful at that time. And of course, I still had knives in my pockets, the slip joints and stuff like that. But that was the next phase. Then I wanted to hunt for, I was looking for, a Hall of Famer style knife. So all the channels I were watching at the time were all talking about this one knife, and that was the Spyderco PM2. So of course I had to say, I saved up, and finally was able to pick up this PM2. Not this exact one, but and not with these, just a standard PM2. Mine was all blacked out. Thought that looked the coolest at the time. And a lot of these knives were safe queens, except for like the lineman knives and stuff like that, and the neck knives. But like this one right here, this one was a safe queen at the time. It took me a while before I wanted to start using knives because I get a different enjoyment out of it. But I picked up the Paramilitary 2, and once I started like carrying this one, I fell in love with it. So I had to see what other Spyderco was out there that I would like, and I wanted something in titanium. Had to have something in titanium because I thought that was the breakthrough, and it is. It's a great material. So lo and behold, I picked up the Spyderco Sage 2 with the Reeve integral lock with my anno finish on it. I ended up doing that to it after a while. Absolutely love this knife. I've owned, I think, 4. Like I still have another one right here. This is Sage 1 in Maximet. Love this knife. And this knife was just I couldn't afford a Sebenza at the time, so I was able to save up. It took me a while to save up for this one, and I had a titanium knife like all the other cool kids. So that was this one right here. I blame for the price increase, over the years, is the Spyderco Sage 2. Then I went on a kick after that with, it had to have the blades. I wanted it to be overbuilt, chunky, stocky, because of I forgot what channel I was watching at the time, but everything had to be 4 millimeters or thicker for me. So that's all I bought, is stuff like this. Is the Boker, what I think it's Impetus, maybe. I always get this one mixed up. It's a birch tree design. Love this one too. But all my knives, I remember I bought one of the Boker Anzos, had super thick stock. And the Spyderco Tough that I have, the older one, that was another one. Then I ended up picking up a Strider. Yeah, that's where it was starting to snowball in price. So then I went from here to, like I just said, picked up my first Strider. It was just a plain Jane Strider, not this one. It was a large. Picked it up in Gulf Shores. I remember how excited I was to own a Sebenza, the Pinnacle knife. So then I had a Sebenza, a Strider, and then of course I had to get the Holy Grail, the Trinity, and I picked up a Hinder as well. So I had all three that at that time were the end all be all. Then from that I went, my collecting went rampant, and my next style knife was going into the smaller knives. And this was more so something that I had to do, kind of, because this was after my accident. And this was the only type of knife I could carry comfortably in the clothing I had to wear. So that's all I bought were smaller knives. And that went on for a while. And then I saw how much I loved a good slicer. So you went in, this is just a stand-in. Went in, I was looking for knives with nice thin ground geometry. I like thinner stock, and that something I still love today is a nice thinly ground knife that is a great slicer. And then the progression, of course, only gets worse. Gets more and more and more, and then finally I come to a custom knife. I think this is probably the most expensive knife in my collection. I don't remember how much I paid for it, but I never in a million years thought I would ever own a custom knife. And it's still not, I don't buy, I don't have many custom knives, and I still love my budget knives just as much as my expensive knives. So that was my knife journey. And now, that'll only change over the years. The longer you're in the hobby, you'll know what I'm talking about. Your taste will change. You'll start liking different things, or somebody will kind of sway you to like something. So that was my knife journey. I would love to hear some of yours. And I can't think. Let me think. I'm going to try to tag somebody right now if they're watching. Let's see. Who do I want to tag? I'm trying to think of I'll put 2 channels up on the screen. If they want to do it, awesome. If they don't, I understand as well. And anybody else who wants to do it, you can. Or if you want to wait for a tag, if it gets started. Sometimes these don't go anywhere, but there you go. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave them down below. Let me know what you think about the video. And if you want to just tell me how your journey went, shortened version down below, I'd appreciate it. All right, guys and girls, I'll see y'all on the next one. Peace.